were able to take it to a studio. So let me ask you, Mr. Patel, after saying we took it to a studio, did you take it to a studio?
Me personally, no.
After you said that we digitized and recorded it and all that, did you take it to a studio and digitize and record it?
Me personally, no.
Okay, so you were lying to Steve Bannon and his audience. Is that what you're saying?
No, I was using the proverbial we appropriately, as you've identified.
The royal we. Oh, I see. And so you certainly promoted the hell out of it, though, didn't you?
I don't know what that means, but I promoted the heck out of raising money for families in need.
With promotions on social media and saying you were going to get this to #1 on the billboards, right, Mr. Patel?
I think it did.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Isn't that great? People who violently attack police have a #1 song thanks to you, Mr. Patel. That's something to be really proud of. Now, you've claimed, Mr. Patel, you didn't know about any of these people in the choir. Is that right?
I did not know about the violent offenders, and I did not participate in any of the violence in and around January 6th.
Tell me, Mr. Patel, what due diligence did you do to find out who was in the choir before you promoted their beautiful music? These people who assaulted law enforcement. What due diligence did you do?
Senator, I didn't record it myself.
So you did no due diligence before you promoted this song by these violent felons. Is that what you're telling us?
Senator, I did not record that myself.
So you're being considered for director of the FBI. And here you did no diligence to find out whether people you were associating with now the President of the United States in song were convicted of attacking police officers. Is that who we want running the FBI? I want you to turn around. There are Capitol Police officers behind you. They're guarding us. Take a look at them right now. Turn around.
I'm looking at you. You're talking to me.
No, look at them. I want you to look at them if you can, if you have the courage to look them in the eye, Mr. Patel, and tell them you're proud of what you did. Tell them you're proud that you raised money off of people that assaulted their colleagues, that pepper sprayed them, that beat them with poles. Tell them you're proud of what you did, Mr. Patel. They're right there. They're guarding you today. Tell them how proud you are.
That's an abject lie, and you know it. I've never, ever accepted violence against law enforcement. I've worked with these men and women, as you know, my entire life,
in song,
and I did not make a single dime out of it.
In song. Well, let me.
How about you ask them if I have their backs, and let's see about that answer.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Patel. Let me ask you this. If an FBI director promoted a song of people who sprayed pepper spray in the face of an FBI agent, would you say they were fit to be director?
Mr. Schiff?
Yes or no? Would they be fit to be director?
I am fit to be the director of the FBI.
If you were the FBI director and you promoted a song with someone who beat an FBI agent with a pole, would you say you were fit to be FBI director?
Mr. Schiff, I am fit to be FBI director based on my 16 years in government service.
And yet you did all these things, Mr. Patel. You can say, oh, I support law enforcement, I decry violence against law enforcement. You can say all that. It's what you did, Mr. Patel, that matters. It's what you did that matters. Well, let me ask you about something else that you did, Mr. Patel. Did you claim that Donald Trump declassified all the documents at Mar-a-Lago? Did you claim that?
In what proceeding?
To the public, ever. Did you tell anyone that Donald Trump declassified all the documents at Mar-a-Lago?
From publicly available information, President Trump issued a declassification order on a variety of materials.
No, I'm just asking you, did you tell the public, did you tell anyone, did you make the claim that Donald Trump had declassified those hundreds of classified documents that were at Mar-a-Lago? Did you make that claim publicly?
From my best of my recollection, I said President Trump issued a declassification order to a large number of documents.
Yeah, and were you present when he declassified all the Mar-a-Lago documents?
Senator, I'm not saying he declassified all the Mar-a-Lago documents. I said President Trump declassified a large number of documents, and I would hope this committee and the rest of Congress would want to get those documents to the American people.
Mr. Patel, before a president or anyone declassified documents, wouldn't you want to know whether making the public would cause sources to be killed? Wouldn't you want to know that before you just declare they're all declassified? Wouldn't that be the responsible thing for a president to do?
It was the responsible thing for us to do. That's why we declassified the Nunes memo.
And did Donald Trump declassify?
And no one died.
And did Donald Trump ever ask any of the agencies who produced those documents whether declassifying them would put people's lives at risk? Did he ever do that, to your knowledge, Kash Patel?
I don't know that he didn't. Do you?
No, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem, isn't it? So let me just ask, Mr. Chairman, if you would, Mr. Patel has said he has no problem. He would support the release of his grand jury testimony in that case. I would ask you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, to join me in requesting, with Mr. Patel's approval, the release of those grand jury transcripts. And I would also ask Mr. Patel whether you support the release of Volume 2 as it pertains to you of the special counsel's report. Any reference to you in the report, to your truthfulness, will you support the release to this committee of those sections of Volume 2 of special counsel's report?
I support following the law and providing whatever information the law requires.
Well, you said to the Wall Street Journal that you support transparency. Here's your chance, Mr. Patel. You support release of that to this committee, yes or no?
Your time's up. Before I call on Senator Tillis, I have letters here from law enforcement groups representing 310,000 officers supporting Mr. Patel's nomination. And they'd be like the Association of Police Organizations, National Police Association, United Federation of Police Officers, Police Benevolent Association, United Coalition for Public Safety. I'll put these in the record. Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Patel, thanks for being here. I want to thank my colleague, Senator Welsh, for being so measured and respectful in the way that he engaged with you. I just want to cover a few things, and I don't know if it'll take 7 minutes or not. I want to go back to the we versus I, since it was the last discussion. Other people may not have been paying attention. I've only missed Senator Booker's questions, but in your exchange with my colleague from one of my former states that I lived in, Louisiana, he repeatedly said you with respect to preparing a memo or documents, and you repeatedly said we. So you are somebody who's not like a lot of people around here that say I a lot, even though it was the we that got things done. So I, for one, appreciate how you focus on that. Now let's talk about how things change over time. I don't know if if the presidential candidate Clinton ever claimed that President Trump was legitimately elected. I know that Stacey Abrams never really, I think, allowed or acknowledged that Governor Kemp was governor until the second time she lost. I don't know what's wrong with you simply saying that President Biden is duly elected. Now, I believe that Senator Welsh is asking for a legitimate reason, but most people aren't. Most people are going to say, now we got you, and now we're going to create a wedge between you and the president and other people by using that word that they can absolutely exploit. So you've answered the question. President Biden was duly elected. I don't have any problem with saying he won because I certified the election along with so many others on January the 6th. Now let me talk about January the 6th. Y'all may not know this. I don't know if it's public. I can't imagine why it'd be classified. This was the room that we retreated to on January the 6th. I was the last Senate member out of the chamber. I was actually approached by one of the vice president's details saying it's time to go. Part of it was because I was really angry and in a little way wanted to fight, which was probably not a good idea. But what I saw, and what I saw for these people, and it's unfair to tell you to get up, order you to physically get up and turn around. It's a great tactic used frequently here in the committee, but you were right to engage the senator respectfully in a line of questioning. I looked at all the ones who were in the chamber on January the 6th, and they were heroes. I looked at the ones after I transcended down the stairs and went into the trains connecting the Capitol. Those heroes were bloody. They were bruised, and they were still holding the line, and we saw and heard people 50 yards away. Every one of those people in the Capitol, I've said, were thugs, and I don't apologize for it. They were either caught up in the moment and didn't do damage to a police officer, or they harmed a police officer, and I disagree absolutely and said it on the Senate floor with the pardons of people who did harm to the president. And I've had conversations with you that suggests that if you had been consulted on that, we'd have probably had a little bit different structure for the pardons, folks. This man understands what happens when the leadership of a law enforcement agency fails to protect their own. And I have to admit that in the last administration, I saw a commander-in-chief who looked the other way when you should have been saying the people who were mostly peaceful protesters in Kenosha with a building burning in the background, well, they had a righteous cause. So it's okay if they harm law enforcement or public safety officers. And when they damaged the federal building in Portland and they harmed police officers there, I didn't see anybody calling for arrest in the insurrection in those government buildings, federal buildings. Folks, let's be consistent, because I am. I said it then and I said it now. These folks are heroes. They got us to this room. We spent hours here, and they were so successful with securing this building, we went back the same day and finished our job. That only happened because of these proud law enforcement officers, and I know you would support them. Okay, let me take a breath. You answered the question on Section 702, but I have to refer to my friend Alex Padilla. We co-chair the Mental Health Caucus together. I love working with them. One of the problems around here with people who pretend like they're bipartisan, but they never do it when it's hard, is that they also make it more difficult for other people. When Section 702 was reauthorized in April of 2024, we had 4 or 5 of our members agree to walk the plank to make sure that and I didn't, by the way, because I wanted the reforms done. But I have to say, I'm glad that they did, because I just had a colleague say they were guilty of bending a knee. What they were guilty of is protecting this nation. Now, were they happy that the reforms weren't done? No. I've heard John Cornyn say things. Mike Lee's got a lot of, Senator Lee, Senator Cornyn. They've got a lot of great ideas, and we should reform it. But that's what's wrong with this place, folks. We just had somebody here try and do an offhanded hit on people that, on a bipartisan basis, reauthorize something that's critically important for keeping this nation safe. So I guess the inference is, next time, don't do that. Be partisan. Go dark. Endanger the U.S. So come on, guys, let's be real here. If anything, I hope I've been consistent on. Let's just be balanced. You know, really, you've had colleagues, we've had colleagues on the other side of the aisle call President Trump an illegitimate president. Now, the witness has acknowledged that President Biden's election was certified. If you want to use a specific word, what are we, in high school? I mean, come on. So I do have to tell you, though, Cash, I've hit bingo a couple of times. And I have a feeling by the time we get to the third round, we will again.
Hope you put a lot of money on it, Senator.
You know what? I put a lot of, I won't call it money, but capital on? It's the due diligence I've done on you and the extraordinary job you're doing in this committee. One of the reasons you're seeing frustration among people asking you questions is you're composed, you're respectful, you reached out to every one of them and asked to meet with them. They've thanked you for doing that. I suspect that those conversations went a lot better than the TV personalities that we've seen today. So I've got 50 minutes. You want to wrap up on, and I'm going to come back for the second round. You want to wrap up on, let me just ask you this question. I went to the floor yesterday to make it very clear. I've been thanking these Capitol Police officers, and I told them I actually thought that the pardons of people who did harm to police officers sucked. And I told them that at every one of these security entrances when I come in, and I stand by it, and I respectfully disagree with the president or whoever likely gave him advice, because the president has to rely on best advice for some of these executive orders. But I make no apology for saying that the men and women on Capitol Hill that got us safely to this building are heroes. The people who harmed them are thugs, but they're out now. So here's their opportunity, Mr. Patel. You find the people that you were convicted of harming, call them, write them a letter, apologize to them. And if you don't, and you come to Capitol Hill, I will track you down and I will burden you until you do. Now I've run out of time. I'll be back for a second round.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Moody.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. And thank you for being here. I know this has been a long day. I am the junior most senator, so I go last. But ever since I got here, and it's been a whole week, I get told two things when I rush up to my fellow senators. Number one, are you Senator Britt? And number two, you know the Senate is a body that is deliberative and calm. And I'm anything but. So I don't know how the next couple of years is going to look, but I hope that they'll bear with me. Serving as the AG over the last 4 years, I've seen a lot of things out of these agencies that I never thought we'd see in the United States of America. I know my fellow attorneys general around the nation would agree with me. In fact, some of them are here today to support you. I'd love to introduce them if they'll stand up. The Attorney General from South Carolina, the former Utah Attorney General, Sean Reyes. I'm sorry, Alan Wilson, I didn't say your name, South Carolina AG. And Louisiana AG, Liz Merrill. They joined me. Thank you for being here. They joined me in signing on to a letter supporting your nomination, and we did that while I was still the Attorney General over a week ago. They came here today to support you, and Mr. Chairman, I know that you've been referencing a lot of letters that you've been entered into evidence. I'd like this to be entered into the record. Sorry, I'm talking like a trial lawyer. With consent, please, sir. This is signed by 24 states' attorneys general that support the nomination of Mr. Patel. One of the things that I have been most upset about is watching federal agencies take more and more and more power and step all over the dual sovereignty of state and local law enforcement and investigations and prosecutions. I know you, like me, served in both the state criminal justice system and the federal criminal justice system. I was a federal prosecutor, a state judge, and a state attorney general, and I know you crossed over those jurisdictions. Do I have your commitment as the director of the FBI that you will respect dual sovereignty of the federal government, the FBI, to pursue its investigations of federal laws, and respect local and state law enforcement pursuing violations of their own laws, even when there may be overlap of investigations?
Senator, not only do you have my commitment, if you may, for the first time ever, the National Sheriff's Association has endorsed a nominee to be the director of the FBI. 3,100 sheriffs, deputies across the country have endorsed me for one reason, I think, primarily, because I'm committed to local level law enforcement as a state jurisdiction. Washington, D.C. cannot fix the problems of this country, but everyday cops can and do it every single day. And so if I'm confirmed as FBI director, we're going to work with local law enforcement because they're going to tell us what they need, and we're going to give them everything we can. But we are not going to trample on local law enforcement because they're the ones keeping our communities safe just as much as anyone here.
The citizens of Florida will be happy to hear that, as well as Americans. As you know, after the second assassination attempt, which took place in the state of Florida against a Florida resident, now President Donald Trump, many people were surprised that that could happen in just over 2 months. Many people were shocked that a would-be assassin could get that close to a president after it had just happened so quickly. So needless to say, many Americans, and certainly Floridians, demanded a transparent and accountable investigation of that second assassination attempt. I was tasked, along with law enforcement in Florida, to pursue that investigation. And every step of the way, federal law enforcement, the FBI specifically, and the attorneys, federal attorneys, frustrated our efforts, told us we couldn't go on the crime scene, they wouldn't share evidence, they suggested that we would be violating the law if we pursued our own investigation, even in the face of us telling them and informing them that a 6-year-old girl almost died as a result of state and local law enforcement having to shut down the roads to pursue that would-be assassin, and I'm not going to use his name. In an unprecedented action, because of these frustrated efforts, I, as the Attorney General of Florida, had to sue the DOJ and Merrick Garland because they refused and obstructed our ability to prosecute and investigate our own laws against one of our own citizens, even in the face of such distrust of the FBI, who was pursuing an investigation against the victim himself. So at a time when you have data that shows that Americans' trust in the FBI is at its lowest point in history, when the FBI is not trusted by local and state law enforcement? Can you think of a better time for the FBI to say, yes, Florida, investigators, come in, let's work this together, not to the detriment of the investigation, but in a collaborative effort? Can you think of a better time to have done that rather than hide behind some law that they said prevented us from moving forward with our own investigation?
Senator, off the top of my head, I can't, but let me just say this. Law enforcement is not supposed to be territorial. Law enforcement is not supposed to be a turf battle. Law enforcement is best done in this country when it is complementary, and it should have been done in that instance.
Do I have your commitment? Now, mind you, I'd like to enter into evidence the complaint that we filed against Merrick Garland, the complaint for declaratory and injunctive relief. This was a result of the FBI obstructing our investigation at every turn. Do I have your commitment that as soon as you are confirmed, which I believe you will be, that you will address this suit, interface with the investigators and the lawyers in Florida, and begin cooperating with us so that we might pursue justice for that little girl?
Absolutely, Senator.
And I'll just finally end with, yes, I have had a lot of work experiences, as you have, working on the front lines with law enforcement to go after those violating laws. But I am also the wife of a law enforcement agent, federal, now local. We need somebody at the helm that understands the mission is to stand on that line between good and evil, between crime and chaos. There is no other mission. And we trust that you're going to right-size this agency and set it back on course. And I am proud to support you.
Thank you, Senator.
Is there any objection among the committee for her request to insert things in the record? I hear none, so ordered. Now we start our second round, 3 minutes each one. I've spoken on this issue many times. I may have even discussed it with you in my office. The FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force inappropriately briefed me and Senator Johnson. That briefing was later used to falsely tie our Biden family investigation to, you can expect it, Russian disinformation. Our investigation was based on records from both the Obama and the Biden administrations, along with various bank records. Over 4 years later, the FBI has yet to provide us the underlying intelligence that they said formed the basis for the briefing. So if confirmed, I want you to work with me to finally get to the bottom of what happened here, including providing me and Senator Johnson with related records.
You have that commitment, Senator, if confirmed.
Defund the police movement and other anti-law enforcement rhetoric has reduced morale among law enforcement, and maybe some of that's carried over to the FBI. I don't know. But what will you do at the FBI to help improve morale and increase retention of the brave men and women serving at the FBI or in law enforcement generally?
Senator, I think the answer dovetails with the mission set of the FBI. In order to increase recruitment, in order to maintain the force capacity at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, we need to incentivize police officers and good cops to be cops, to let them get out there and do the mission that they signed up to do, which is protect our community against gang violence, against rapists, against thugs, against murderers, and against terrorists. And I will prioritize, if confirmed, every resource that we have to make sure the 1811s in the field and the FBI staff are dedicated to that mission set alone. And if we achieve that with the work of congressional transparency, then I believe the retention rates and the enrollment rates at the FBI will skyrocket.
You spent 10 years in public defending. What's the biggest lesson you took away from that experience?
The awesome powers of the United States government when bearing down against an individual charged with some very serious crimes, some heinous crimes. And the biggest lesson is twofold. One, that the defense has a right, every defendant has a right to constitutional due process, and not a piece of it, but all of it, 100% every single day. And on the other side, there needs to be a measured action that follows constitutional due process and doesn't violate the civil liberties of those that we are seeking to hold against violations of law. And that balance is one of the most important lessons I learned as both a public defender and a national security prosecutor at the Department of Justice.
80 years ago, Attorney General Robert Jackson said something like, being a prosecutor is the most powerful office in the country because he's got the power to ruin people if you want to ruin people. You've probably been up against some of that.
I have.
Yeah. What you've mentioned, my time's up, I guess. Yes, it is. Oh, yeah. It's your turn.
You'll finish your question.
Well, you brought up public trust at 41%. So in a general way, without going for an hour, tell me what you're going to do to increase the public trust of the FBI.
Simple. Make sure we don't have 100,000 rapes in this country next year. Make sure we don't have 100,000 drug overdoses from Chinese fentanyl and Mexican heroin. And make sure we don't have 17,000 homicides. Those numbers need to be cut in half immediately. And the public will regain trust in the FBI and law enforcement once we achieve that mission.
Senator Durbin.
Mr. Patel, I have 3 or 4 things, and I'll try to get through them quickly. First is this. When it comes to the issue of violence in politics, I personally believe it has no place in politics. Whether it's violence against Donald Trump at the Butler County Fairgrounds or violence against Nancy Pelosi's husband in her home, period. And those people who, Proud Boys, whatever the heck they call themselves, have no place in this country as far as I'm concerned if they espouse violence in any form. Do you agree?
Yes, Senator.
Let the record show we actually agreed on something. Number 2, the reason why we keep asking, which may sound a little silly to the audience here, why are we so concerned about this choir singing a song? What's that got to do with anything? The question is, who are you going to care about? Who are you going to help? Are you going to help those victims of January 6th, the policemen and their families? Or are you going to help people who were arrested for assaulting them? I think the J6 choir looks like a tribute to them, characterizing them as political prisoners and unlucky and just patriotic.
Thank you, Mr. Patel, for returning on time. Senator Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm struggling with a bit of the flu here, but thought it was really important to come.
Everybody's got flu.
Yeah, it's been pretty rough, but I appreciate the time. And Mr. Patel, if I can jump right in, 12 prosecutors, career prosecutors, were involved in an investigation and prosecuting the cases against President Trump and were recently fired. Some of those that were involved in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. Do you know who Brett Reynolds is?
Maybe, but it doesn't ring a bell at this point. So.
You're under oath. You have no recollection of who Brett Reynolds is?
If you could provide me with a little more context, I could possibly remember.
Are you aware of any plans or discussions to punish in any way, including termination, FBI agents or personnel associated with Trump investigations?
Senator, just to be clear, I did not participate in any of those DOJ
Sir,
decisions.
that's a yes or no question. Are you aware of any plans or discussions to punish in any way, including termination, FBI agents or personnel associated with Trump investigations? Yes or no?
I'm not aware of that,
Thank you.
Senator.
There is no evidence of wrongdoing by FBI employees involved in these investigations. If you do pursue investigations of those involved, will you commit to using standard processes, including a standard review by the FBI Inspections Division and the Inspector General?
Senator, I will honor all those review processes.
You will honor those review processes.
Yes, Senator.
If these are actions that the FBI employees, if there are actions against FBI employees that do not follow those standards process that happen before you get in, will you commit to reversing any decision prior to your arrival so that those standard processes and the standard review by the FBI Inspections Division will take place?
I don't know what's going on right now over there, but I'm committed to you, Senator, and your colleagues that I will honor the internal review process of the FBI.
Have you made any commitments to anyone about pursuing any investigations or targets if you are FBI director?
Only violent criminals and terrorists.
Have you had any conversations with anyone on the transition team about pursuing any investigations or targets?
Only following the Constitution.
Again, are you certain?
That I have told people on the
Are you
administration.
certain? Have you had any conversations with anyone on the transition team about pursuing any investigations or targets?
Senator, to the best of my recollection, I've only said I will use the Constitution.
Have you discussed specific investigations or targets you would pursue as FBI director with the President of the United States?
Senator, to the best of my recollection, no.
Are you certain?
To the best of my recollection, no.
According to public reports, you were subpoenaed by the federal prosecutors to testify as a witness before the grand jury investigation investigating the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. And you testified before the grand jury, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you were before the grand jury, you pled the fifth on the basis of self-incrimination, correct?
I utilized my constitutional rights during that process with the advice and consent of counsel and appeared before that grand jury.
I will take that as a yes. And you are familiar, I imagine, with Section 6002 of Title 18.
Off the top of my head, Senator, not.
Well, Section 6002 is the immunity statute. Whenever a witness refuses to testify or provide other information before a grand jury based upon the privilege against self-incrimination, the court can order the witness to testify. The witness must comply with the order, but they receive immunity, which means that no testimony or any other information provided before the grand jury can be used against them in any criminal proceeding. You were compelled to testify as a witness in the Mar-a-Lago classified document case. Did you participate in any criminal conduct involved in that case?
Involved in which, the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case?
Yes.
No, I testified through compulsion by court order.
You received immunity for providing information that was self-incriminating. Do you remember the name of the prosecutor who questioned you?
There were multiple, Senator. I do not.
Was it one of the people, were any of them people that were fired this past week?
I have no idea, Senator.
Are you certain? You're under oath.
I'm aware that I'm under oath, Senator, and I have no idea, and I did not participate in the removal of any DOJ prosecutors.
What was the information you provided that you received immunity for?
Senator, I would love my grand jury testimony to be released, but as you know, that grand jury testimony has been sealed by the Department of Justice, and I'm not allowed to discuss it here.
Well, I find it troubling that you do not know the law here, and let me tell you what the law is. Rule 6 governs grand jury proceedings. Under Rule 6E, grand jurors, court reporters, and prosecutors are bound to secrecy. But witnesses are not bound by secrecy. You were a witness in the classified documents case. You are not bound by secrecy. You can tell us everything that happened in that room and everything you testified about. I'll ask you again, what information did you provide to the grand jury?
In this, we are in agreement, Senator. Get my grand jury testimony. I want it made public. I asked the Department of Justice to make it public, and they refused to do so.
There is no legal bound against you telling us right now what you testified to.
When I asked for my transcript to be released, the
Sir,
Department
did
of
you or did you
Justice-
not commit a crime?
Senator, I did not commit a crime.
Then why won't you tell us what you testified to?
Because it occurred over the course of 3 weeks. I don't have the ability to recall everything I testified to, but I'm asking you to
Did
put
you
my
testify
transcript
to
down.
witnessing the President of the United States declassifying documents?
Senator, what I testified to is best captured by that transcript
So
in real
you're not
time.
willing to tell Congress, after making many pledges today about transparency, whether or not you testified to witnessing the President of the United States declassify documents. In the name of all the values you have said today, did you or did you not testify to witnessing the President of the United States declassify documents?
I testified accordingly and under oath, and I encourage you to get that transcript.
And by the law of our land, you are free to tell people, what are you hiding from Congress? Answer the question. Did you testify to witnessing the President of the United States declassifying documents, yes or no?
Senator, the grand jury testimony is available to you. I encourage you to make it public.
As you likely know, the second volume of Jack Smith's report about the classified document case is not public yet. To fulfill our constitutional duty of advice and consent, the President, on nominations, members of this committee have asked the DOJ to review the report. Do you agree that Congress should thoroughly review its nominees? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, last question and I'll be done. When you and I met, you told me that you wanted to remove 11,000 FBI personnel or move many of them, and you said that again today. You have looked at an org chart to understand what offices and functions that you'll be pulling from. I don't think you've done a serious analysis, but I do think you have an assignment from Donald Trump to gut the FBI. You said yourself, I'll shut down the FBI Hoover building. There are people specifically that you are targeting, I believe. And do you agree that you have already prepared plans to remove certain individuals from their offices? For example, individuals that will be replaced by political personnel. The political personnel that are being put in an institution that you and I discussed that has no political appointees but one, the political personnel involve these names: Erica Knight, Tom Ferguson, Greg Mitzner.
You stated your question. Would you answer? Or don't you want to? Okay.
We can move on.
Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Patel, there is absolutely no doubt that you have the experience and the expertise to lead the FBI, and we welcome you here today. We are pleased that you are here. I've been listening to my colleagues across the dais and listening to their questions, and it has led me to one thing. Why are the Democrats so afraid of you?
I don't know, Senator. You'd have to ask them.
Well, I tell you what I think, and listening to their questions and your responses, which we appreciate, they know that you're going to go in and you're going to clean up that political cabal that has been over there for years. You are going to reposition the FBI to its core mission. You stated that earlier in this hearing, and there will be no more political persecutions and no more 2 tiers of justice, and they have liked having 2 tiers of justice. They have enjoyed it, and it has helped them. They think in their political mission, they've enjoyed targeting Catholics. They've enjoyed targeting parents. But the American people have said they want no more of that. And our colleagues know you're going to clean it up. I want to talk to you about the Epstein case. I have worked on this for years, trying to get those records of who flew on Epstein's plane and who helped him build this international human trafficking, sex trafficking ring. Now, earlier I urged then Chairman Durbin to subpoena those records, and I ended up being blocked by Senator Durbin and Christopher Wray. They stonewalled on this, and I know that breaking up these trafficking rings is important to President Trump. So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past and how we are going to countermand missing children and exploited children going forward.
Thank you for that. I do want to touch on the political persecution. I find it so interesting that they feel like you would carry out political persecution. Your parents are with us today. They fled Uganda and persecution from Idi Amin. And I think that with your background and given your family's history, that you would never move to political persecution. Is that accurate?
Yes, Senator, that is.
And we appreciate that you would remove any kind of 2 tiers of justice from the FBI because they have practiced that every day for years. Not all FBI agents. There are some good ones, and we certainly want to keep them, but the politics has got to be moved out of the agency. Now, they've tried to frame you as being anti-police. We've discussed that some today. And I know that you grew up working with NYPD officers in your community. And I know that law enforcement groups, including the National Association of Police Organizations, have endorsed your nomination. And on top of that, your brother is a law enforcement officer. Is that accurate?
Many of my family are, yes, Senator.
How many of your family, sir?
Well, I guess the Indians have a different definition of family. We got a really big one, and they're all family.
We all love big families.
So we got a lot.
I appreciate that. But it is accurate to say that in your role, you're going to do everything that you possibly can to protect the men and women who are protecting our communities.
That is of the utmost importance.
Thank you. I want to go to the Nunes memo. You were the principal author of the Nunes memo. Is that accurate?
Yes, me and staff.
Thank you. And that did really so much to focus the light on the Russiagate hoax and the political cabal that was for years operated out of the DOJ and the FBI. And I know that there are some that felt like that memo was not accurate. We know now differently. And I'm quoting a comment that was made about that memo and by a member of that House Intel Committee, and I quote, "It was meant only to give Republican House members a distorted view of the FBI," end quote. I find it so interesting. They use the term distorted view. I think the American people who for 4 years under Biden saw the FBI weaponized against them, against parents, against people of faith, weaponized against President Trump. I think they would disagree with that. Do you stand by the good work that you did on the Nunes memo?
Our team, and yes, absolutely.
And the Nunes memo was accurate in its description of the details, correct?
As confirmed by the Inspector General, the Special Counsel, because the Nunes memo only contains sworn information received pursuant to transcribed interviews and production of government materials, including FBI 302s and DOJ memorandum.
So the Nunes memo is accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that. In your new role as director, how will you work to root out 2 tiers of justice at the FBI?
The same way I have always done so, ma'am, with the utmost fidelity to the Constitution and integrity to law enforcement. Government must allow those who are privileged to serve to execute their law enforcement duties fully, but at the same time, the American people deserve accountability inwards to government to any of those who violate that sacred trust.
And as you prepare to take this new role, what are the top areas of concern for you as we look at our national security?
The top areas when it comes to national security, ma'am, have remained unchanged, and the threat dynamic has increased. It's thwarting terrorist activities and terrorist attacks here and overseas against our citizens and our allies, and it also includes CCP espionage, which is running rampant these last 5 years through our country, including our cyber infrastructure and our agricultural properties. And it also includes taking on Iran, the #1 state sponsor of terror, and any other adversary that wishes to harm America.
Thank you. I look forward to a yes vote on your confirmation.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Padilla.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, yes.
since the senator from Tennessee raised my name, I'd like to respond.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, while I was chair of the committee, protecting children from sexual exploitation was one of our highest priorities. We chaired hearings on kids' online safety, and we decided on a bipartisan basis to call the big tech CEOs in for an important, maybe historic meeting of this committee. Last year, the committee reported 6 bipartisan bills to help protect child safety online, including one of my own, Stop CSAM, and Senator Blackburn's Report Act. In the previous Congress, Senator Blackburn and I led legislation that was signed into law that eliminated statutes of limitation for federal civil suits by survivors of childhood sex abuse. I've worked to ensure the DOJ's unethical non-prosecution agreement with Jeffrey Epstein is investigated. As I've argued in this committee, my Inspector General Access Act would allow the Inspector General to investigate that. Yet, in 2023, I was falsely accused of preventing releasing the names of Jeffrey Epstein's network by Mr. Patel, when my Republican colleagues prevented Senator Blackburn from offering an amendment to the flight logs. Prior to the committee's November 9th, 2023 Supreme Court ethics subpoena markup, Senator Blackburn had never raised Epstein's flight logs with me publicly or privately. During the November 30th, 2023 Supreme Court ethics subpoena authorization markup, I tried to recognize her multiple